Hello, and welcome to our Spotlight program today. I'm Marcy Christensen, Education Coordinator for Dining for Women, filling in for Dr. Maggie Aziz, our Program Director. And we have Laura Haight standing by to help us with any technical glitches. She's our Communications Director. We're here today to talk to Wendy Tryon, co-founder of the Tanzania Nursing Scholarship Program, which is our featured program for June. In the spring of 2007, Wendy and two other nurses, registered nurses, Linda Van Werkhoven and Gail Roberts, visited Tanzania. They loved the country and the people. They found quite a bit of poverty. They found a shortage of nurses, tremendous shortage of nurses in rural areas especially. 24 nurses for every 100,000 people in Tanzania, as compared to 890 nurses for every 100,000 people in the United States. They also found young women who wanted to go to nursing school, but they lacked the funds to do so. So that very fall in 2007, they funded 2 scholarships. They sent 2 young women to nursing school. Those young women have graduated, and since then 32 more young women have graduated with dual diplomas in nursing and midwifery. Another 12 are going to graduate this year. And Wendy, thank you so much for joining us today. I understand you have some slides to show us, and you'll tell us by that way a brief overview of the program and what Dining for Women dollars will do. Take it away, Wendy.
Thanks, Marcy. I'll bring up the slides now. Okay. Thanks again, Marcy. Besides a traditional safari, we went on a cultural tour, which included a tour of several of the small rural hospitals. We noted the lack of nurses, supplies, and equipment. We saw tremendous need, and being nurses, we wanted to assist girls and women of Tanzania. So when we returned, we researched more about Tanzania. What we found was that Tanzania is one of the poorest countries in the world with few opportunities for education and professional jobs for women. Most women do menial types of jobs. There are more males attending school than females. 80% of Tanzania is rural, with a cash income of less than $1 a day. The ratio of nurses to population, as Marcy said, was 24 to 100,000, in contrast to 890 to 100,000 here in the U.S. The maternal infant mortality rate is very high, 4.5 to 1,000 for women. In infants, it is 46.5 to 1,000. In the U.S., the infant mortality is 6.3 to 1,000. 40% of the population is malnourished. We then decided to sponsor nursing students. After graduation, there are many opportunities for nurses in the private and government sectors, making approximately $350 to $400 a month. As Marcy said, in the fall of 2007, we sponsored our first 2 students, Chiku and Jacqueline, at the Kilimanjaro Christian Medical Center School of Nursing in Moshi, Tanzania. They are both now employed as nurses in the Dar es Salaam area. And this is Chiku and this is Jacqueline. Since 2007, we've been fortunate to increase the number of students thanks to the generosity of many people. In 2012, we expanded the program to include the Tukuyu School of Nursing located in the Southern Highlands of Tanzania. This is the KCMC School of Nursing in Moshi, where we first sponsored our students. Tukuyu nursing students, they come from the Southern Highlands of Tanzania. You'll see every student with an English dictionary, and we provide every student we sponsor with an English dictionary. The selection process is the same for both schools. We sponsor students for their 2nd and 3rd years. We pay all the school fees and a small amount of pocket money. We work with the principals, tutors, and bursars to identify those who meet our criteria, which is great financial need, passing grades. We only sponsor women. The students we sponsor are orphans or from single-parent households. If there are two parents, they are from a very poor peasant background or they have health issues. Often students are cared for by extended family members. These students have survived many hardships and sacrifices by their families to have reached this point in their education. Students have borrowed from family, friends, neighbors, sold off livestock, and even their farms to pay school fees. It is often they come back to school empty-handed and have lost time from their studies. This places tremendous stress on the students, sometimes causing physical illness. We had one student show up um, barefoot and had no money. She was taken into the principal's home until she could get into school. Another showed up with no money, running away from an arranged marriage. Another student's sister was married to get enough money for school. In some families, the other siblings have not been able to go to school as the money was diverted to pay for first year of nursing school. It is not uncommon for students to be asked to go home to raise money for school fees. The Tukuyu principal contacted us this past year with an SOS as two of her students were going home and leaving school because there was no money available for them to pay their tuition fees. We initially said no because there was no more scholarship money available. The Dalton Rotary in Dalton, Massachusetts, 3 weeks later presented us with a check to cover their tuition and fees. The two girls were called back to school to resume their studies. In 2007, tuition and pocket money cost us approximately $300, and the government paid the remaining tuition per student. In 2012, the government increased fees over 100%, costing us a little over $500 per student. In 2014, they increased the fees over 45%, which is a little over $700 per student. It's pretty hard to imagine how a family making a cash income of $1 a day is going to be able to pay a $300 tuition, but then have it raised to over $700. And this is one of our students with her family at her home. And one of the requirements, besides having passing grades, is that they send us a monthly email from which we select a few for our monthly newsletter. The nurse in the white sweater is one of our graduates, Tegamea, who's teaching newly selected students how to access the internet and send email. If you would like to receive our newsletter, please go to our website, www.tanzanianursingstudents.org. Okay, this is a rural prenatal clinic. And this is one of our students who's assessing a patient. And a private benefactor donated this vital stim mannequin to KCMC Nursing School. To date, we've graduated 34 students, and they've all passed their national exams and are employed as nurses. After graduation, they end up supporting family members and providing basic needs for their families. For example, building homes and providing healthcare needs. In 2014, 12 students will graduate. We currently sponsor 28 students at both schools. We travel yearly to select new students and assess our program. 100% of donations go to the students to pay school fees. The DFW grant will allow us to sponsor an additional 25 students. If not for the DFW grant, these students probably would not have been able to finish their nursing education. When the DFW grant recipients were informed of their scholarships, they clapped, they jumped up and down, they hugged each other and cried. They would like to thank their sponsors and to let you know that because of your generosity, they now can focus on their studies with no fears of having to leave school. This brings them tremendous peace of mind. They want their sponsors to know they will always be in their thoughts and prayers. Families are included. And this, we hope, is a future nurse. And thank you so much for all your efforts. We really appreciate it. Okay. Okay. Sorry, Marcy.
Marcy, I think you're still
Okay.
muted.
I'm sorry, I was still muted. I forgot to click my button. So I thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you so much. And I have a couple of questions for you about the program. What, why is English used rather than a native tongue in Tanzania in the schools?
Tanzania was in the British Empire, and the English language was taught starting in the third year of the primary schooling, and they've just continued with that since 1960. And they're just, to compete in the world, people have to know English, so that's
Right.
why they continue with the English.
Right. Okay. About how many students are in these? These are government nursing schools,
Yes.
and you work with two schools. And how many students? Say, how many first-year students are there about in each school?
About 50 to 55
Mm-hmm. That's first year. And
for first year.
tell us why Tanzania Nursing Scholarship Program doesn't fund the first year of this is a 3-year program, right? And you fund the second and third year of school.
Yes.
And why not the first year?
Well, students have to be on the science track in secondary school. They then have to take an exam to get into school. Actually, before they even apply to the Ministry of Health for nursing school, so they have to pass 3 out of the 5 science tests, and then they apply to the Ministry of Health, and then the Ministry of Health assigns them to a nursing school. And at that point, we're not sure, and this was under the recommendation of the principal, was that they're really calling out the students the first year for the ones who really can't make it as a nurse. They're not interested. Educationally, they can't make it. So, or they don't have the school fees. But fortunately now, we're catching a lot of the students who would have to leave school the first year because they didn't have the school fees. So those are the students that we're catching.
So they've somehow managed to cobble together the funding to get to the first year, but it doesn't seem that it can be almost impossible for them to continue.
And a lot of them are so stressed during that first year of school. Sometimes they're asked to go back to their village and collect more money for tuition fees because they haven't been able to pay their full year, and it's just extremely stressful for them, so they can't really concentrate on their studies.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot of them, they get ulcers, and they just lose a lot of weight that they don't have to lose.
Yeah. At what point do they learn that they will have a scholarship?
Usually we are there in the winter, and we are, it's coming down to the end of the first year, so we're evaluating them there. And by the end of the first year of school, they know whether they'll have a scholarship.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
For the second year.
I was going to ask you a bit about nursing schools in Tanzania, the government nursing schools. My only experience of a nursing school is a U.S.-based model, and I understand that it's very different in Tanzania. And what kind of challenges the girls face in going to school there?
Okay. Well, the number one challenge is fees, of course. Books is another major issue. When we first started sponsoring students, they were having study groups because they had to share a set of textbooks. I believe it was one set of books to 5 students,
Oh,
and there would be a tutor present helping them.
yeah.
Um, there are not enough tutors or instructors. Um, English can be a challenge for them, even though they've, been instructed in English. Um, Sometimes, their English isn't that great. Um, when they go work in the hospitals for their clinical experience, because of the lack of nurses, they have to take on more responsibilities. So that really takes away from their learning experience, what they're supposed to be working on. Um, and then once they graduate and they take their national exam, they sometimes have to wait a very long time, at least 3 months, to hear the results.
Oh. And what you were telling me the other day, what kind of things they do while they're waiting? What do they can't practice it. They can't get work in a hospital or any kind. They can't get work as a midway for a nurse until they have their certification.
Right, but they can work as what we used to be able to as a graduate nurse. They can not do nursing, but can work on the floors and help out, but
Hmm.
not in a nurse's capacity or licensed capacity. And some of them go home to their villages and volunteer in some of the dispensaries that are available. They try to help out and continue with the nursing experience
Hmm.
until they do.
So 25 additional students will get scholarships, and if there were more scholarship funds available, um, what might be uh, the need as far as even more, if we could get more scholarship money to Tanzania, how many more students could the schools take?
Um, there, we can always use more scholarship money because there are a lot of students who are in need. There are other schools that we haven't been able to get to at this point, but when we have the money and it's above and beyond what the number of students we can sponsor in Moshi and in Takuyu, we will go to the other nursing schools
You
and
know,
assess their needs.
right, right. Okay. I'm saying the minutes that are left. Oh my goodness. Okay, we are almost ready to wrap it up, and I wanted to ask you if there's anything else that you'd like to share with us about the students and how whether you're in touch with the graduates over what period of time and what you hear from how they're doing their success.
We Since we introduced them to the internet and emails, some of the students have remained on Facebook. So we do hear from some of the students and what they are doing. Some of them have gotten married and had children. They're working in the hospitals, in clinics, and some of them we haven't heard from. So, but they are all so appreciative of
Yeah.
the support because they would have gone home and not been able to finish their education,
Right.
and they would be stuck in menial jobs.
Hmm. There were some, I noticed the age of the girls when they're starting nursing school is older than the typical, than here in the United States when we graduate secondary school and start higher education, then they're like 23 to 25.
That's because a lot of the girls, their education has been interrupted. That they've been in school maybe for a year or two, and then their parents want another sibling to go to school, so they have to go home, and another sibling will go to school, and then maybe in a few years they can go back to school, and
Uh,
it really extends the length of time that it takes for them to get their education.
yeah, yeah, it sure
And then
does.
some of them have to work to get the tuition fees to go to nursing school.
Mhm.
So that
Right.
may take a few years.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Wendy, so much for being with us here today, and thank you for changing the world. Thank you for what you're doing for the students and for the health of the communities where they'll work. Um, we're going to wrap it up, and I will say uh, thank you, and I hope that you'll join us again. The listeners will join us again when we come back next month, and we'll be talking to, let's see, next month with the spotlight will be on our July program, which is RAIN for the Sahel and Sahara. And this program, this conversation will be available live within the hour or in about an hour on our YouTube channel. You just go to youtube.com/DFW events, and it will also be linked from the homepage of our website, diningforwomen.org. We thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you again. Thank you very much.